You need a system to organize your miles and points to keep you from wasting points and time and money. What kind of mistakes? Things like missing out on a welcome offer you thought you were going to earn, paying an annual fee for an extra year unnecessarily, letting points expire, or missing out on card benefits. If you think these things won't happen to you, I can tell you that every single one I have listed has happened to me. Thankfully, in the past few years, there have been some great tools developed to make tracking your credit cards and points easy, and we're going to discuss those today. Welcome back to Points for Normal People. I'm Katie, and I'm here because I know that travel costs add up, especially for a family. But I believe that travel isn't just for the rich. That's why on Points for Normal People, I share the tips and tricks that my family has been using for over a decade to supercharge our credit card points using welcome offers and everyday expenses so that you can learn these same tricks and pay for an entire family vacation every year. The first big mistake that I made when I was getting started with points was missing out on a card bonus. This was in 2014, and I remember the year clearly because we had just bought our house, and our house was almost 100 years old, and we were doing a lot of remodeling projects. Remodeling projects are a great way to earn a lot of credit card bonuses, and this was perfect timing for us since this is when we were trying to save up miles for going to the Philippines to adopt our son. One of the cards I opened was an American Airlines card. We got the card and did the required spending. And our bonus didn't show up. And it didn't show up. And finally, I called to see what was going on, and the representative told me that I didn't qualify for the bonus. See, what had happened is that this card had some fine print that said you could only get this welcome offer if you hadn't earned the bonus on this card in the past 24 months. I knew I had earned a previous bonus on this card, but I hadn't been keeping very good records, and I had only waited 23 months before applying for this card again. So we had done all that spending for nothing, spending we could have been putting onto another card. After that, I realized I needed to get more organized. At that time, there weren't any apps or websites to help me get organized, so I just created a simple spreadsheet. I had a column for the card name, a column for who had opened the card, my husband or I, a column for the minimum spend required. I also added the date the minimum spend needed to be completed, and one last column for any notes. More important than the spreadsheet was developing the habit of regularly checking the spreadsheet. I started checking in at least once a month on my spreadsheet to make sure I was on track for completing spending and to see if there were any cards that I needed to cancel. I would change the font color of a card to red if I canceled it, and note the date it was canceled. If I kept a card beyond the first year, I colored the font green to show it was a keeper for us. This system kept me going pretty well for the next 5 years. Again, it was dependent on me checking the spreadsheet regularly, so it wasn't automated at all, but I was at least keeping track. And this was just enough to help track the essential information. When you start a new hobby, sometimes it's hard at first to wrap your head around what you actually need to do to stay organized. If you're following my 3 year plan and opening 4 or more credit cards a year, there is some information you're going to have to keep track of. But it doesn't take a lot of time to do it. And investing the time now to get set up will save you a lot of time later. The first thing you need to know is the open date for any credit card that you have. Open date is important for a few reasons. First, it will help you determine which credit cards you've had the longest and which ones you will need to prioritize keeping. If you didn't listen to episode 3, I recommend you go back and listen to that episode because it goes over all you need to know in order to keep your credit score high while also opening cards for points. Knowing the date you opened a card will also help you estimate when you might have previously earned a welcome bonus on your card. This is important because you want to know when you will be eligible to cancel the card and earn a bonus again. The fine print is different for every card, but typically you can earn a welcome bonus after it has been 24 to 48 months since you've earned it on that card. Again, this will depend card to card. Since most cards give you 3 months to earn a welcome offer, You can add 4 months onto the date you opened a card, and that's a conservative estimate of the date of when you earned that offer last. Next, the open date also helps you to determine where you stand in relation to Chase's 524 rule. If you skipped episode 5, you'll want to go back and hear the strategy tips I gave in regards to the 524 rule. Last, the open date is important because it tells you when you will be charged the annual fee in future years. Now, it likely won't be 12 months exactly after you've opened that card that your annual fee is due, but it's close and gives you a heads up that it's time to decide if you want to keep, downgrade, or cancel a card. Again, we haven't gotten into much to those differences, but we will talk about that in future episodes. You get all of that information just by knowing the open date on each of your current and closed credit cards. So, to review, by noting the open date for each of your credit cards, you'll be able to know which cards to prioritize keeping for your credit score, when you'll be eligible to earn another bonus on each card, what your 524 status is, when your annual fee is coming due, and if it's a brand new card, the open date will also help determine when your spending needs to be done in order to earn your bonus. If you don't know offhand the open date for every card you have, don't worry. This information is on your credit report. Hopefully, you got a copy of your credit report from annualcreditreport.com or Credit Karma after listening to a previous episode. If not, this is the time to do it. Sometimes it can be hard to discern which card is which if you have a few from the same bank. If you have multiple cards from Chase, for instance, it might just say Chase credit card and not tell you which one is which. In that case, you may need to cross reference your online accounts with the bank to look back and see when you received your first account statement. This should help you match it all up. So, we've established that knowing the open date of a card is important. This is a piece of information you need to track. It's a small piece, right? It's just the open date of the credit card, but it's a really important piece of information to track. I'm going to share a few more essential pieces of information to track. And again, these are all easy, and then some options for how to automate the tracking process. Just like you want to track when you open a card, it's good to track when you close a card. This is mostly to determine your eligibility for welcome offers on cards. Occasionally, the language in the fine print includes something not just about when you earned an offer previously on a card, but sometimes it has to do with when you previously closed that card. The third essential piece of information you need to track, and this is for new cards, is the deadline for your welcome offer. Typically, the language on credit card applications will say that you have 90 days from when you open a card to complete the spending. Again, this can vary. Sometimes you'll have 4 months, sometimes you'll have 9 months, but overall, 3 months, I would say, is the average amount of time that you have to spend to complete a welcome offer. Despite the systems that I have in place, I recently actually missed a deadline on a card. Or to be more specific, I thought I missed a deadline. In fact, I think I should have missed the deadline, but somehow I didn't. So here's my recent story of mistake, but then it turned out okay. I opened a Chase Aeroplan card in December and calculated my 90 days to be on March 22nd for when I had to complete the spending. I had to spend $4,000, and when I checked in early March, I saw I was about $1,000 short. So I made, or more accurately, I thought I made a $1,000 payment. The problem was that I made two identical payments of $1,000 on the same day from two different cards. Now, I did this because I was splitting my payment so that I could maximize my credit card rewards. But the organization I was paying thought they were doing me a favor by canceling the second payment, which they thought was a duplicate. I didn't pay attention to this until my Aeroplan bill came, and I realized I hadn't received my bonus miles. I sent a secure message to Chase in somewhat of a panic, while also being very annoyed with myself. I figured I had a slim chance, but just wanted to explain what happened in case they could have any leeway. What really surprised me was that they said I had until April 14th to have all my charges post according to their system. I honestly don't know where that number came from because it is more than 90 days past even my first purchase. So it was definitely more than the 3 months that the bonus is advertised for. But I guess that the lesson here is that if that happens to you, don't be afraid to call or send a message and just ask. I even had a friend who missed the deadline on a Sapphire Preferred card because she just got the spending wrong in her brain, and she was still awarded her points even though she was a bit late in completing her spending. So don't be afraid to call and ask. It never hurts. If I had just given up, I wouldn't have had the chance to get those points, which I now have earned because I've made that $1,000 payment again.
But also, if you have good systems, it can help prevent that from happening to begin with. If I had double checked that my purchase went through, I would not have had any issue because I would have just submitted it again. You can see that you don't have to track a ton of things for your credit cards. It shouldn't take that much time. Those three are just the minimum essential ones: open date, close date, and for new cards, minimum spend due date. I will add that you do, of course, need to pay your bills on time, so you'll need to know your statement due date. In my case, as I've mentioned, I make sure to set up everything on auto pay so that I don't have to know my precise due date for each card. When I started getting into the miles and points hobby 13 years ago, there weren't a lot of streamlined systems created. So, like I mentioned, I created a simple spreadsheet to track all of this. If that sounds the easiest to you, use a spreadsheet. Mine is extremely simple, but you can find it in the show notes. I also heard from my Facebook group that there are some nice looking templates available that you can buy on Etsy. If you prefer to enter this information into an app that will automatically send you email reminders or phone notifications, there are apps for that now too. I think the most user friendly app is Travel Freely. This is specifically for tracking credit cards. This is the app that we switched to in, I believe, about 2020. Travel Freely is basically my spreadsheet, but automated. I'll tell you right now that I do have affiliate links for Travel Freely, but this endorsement isn't paid. It's just the best product I found for this purpose and the one that I use myself. One of the reasons that I like partnering with Travel Freely is that they're committed to showing the best offers for credit cards just like I am, even if they won't earn a commission from it. You don't need to link your Travel Freely account to any banks or accounts directly, so it's totally secure. You're not giving any logins or passwords. Travel Freely is just going to ask you for that information that I told you that you need to track. When you create an account, you can actually track cards for two different people in the same account, which is another reason I like it because I can do it all for my husband and myself in one place. And every card that you enter, it will start by asking the card name, which you should know. When you enter a card, it will default to the open date being the date that you're adding it. So, the first time that you're signing up for Travel Freely, you'll need to be sure to backdate any older cards that you're adding. But then moving forward, it becomes an easy part of a habit that as soon as you open a card, you just hop onto Travel Freely and enter that card because it'll start tracking when you need to do your spending for the bonus. And then it'll know the date that you opened it was that day that you're adding it. From this information, just the card name and the open date, Travel Freely will automatically start sending you reminders. So when your bonus deadline is approaching, you'll get a reminder. When your annual fee is coming due, you'll get a reminder that you could consider downgrading or canceling a card, or maybe you'll decide to keep the card. The one reminder that it doesn't send is to set up autopay. So you'll have to remember to do this on your own. This is honestly the hardest part of the process for me to have a system for, because some cards you can't set up autopay until you receive your first statement, so you really just have to watch for it and be ready to pay it. Travel Freely will also calculate your 524 count, but keep in mind that it is only as accurate as the information you give it. If you leave off cards, it won't be able to accurately calculate your 524 score. Now, Travel Freely will recommend that you apply for a card no more than every 90 days. It will also track that interval. For people with a high credit score, I personally think that this is a bit more conservative than necessary. We often apply for cards more frequently than this, especially when we're adding in business cards. But you can know that if you do follow this policy of a card every 90 days, it is a very solid and safe strategy. More importantly, I just don't recommend getting too hung up on the exact intervals between cards. My idea is that it's better to be monitoring your personal credit score and seeing how it's being affected rather than just following arbitrary rules. There is another tool that is, I'd say, more powerful than Travel Freely that's called card pointers. But the pro version, which is the particularly powerful one, is $60 per year. I don't necessarily recommend this for most beginners because I think a $60 a year app seems like a lot when you're just starting out and you're trying to save money. But card pointers automate some other processes that can help you streamline things like adding Chase and Amex offers. I'm really just starting to test out card pointers this year for myself and can plan to do an episode after I've had a chance to have a better handle on it and see what my full review is. So, whether you use a spreadsheet or travel freely or card pointers or some other way to track even a note in your phone, you'll need to track your credit cards. You'll also need to track the points and miles that you're earning, especially so that they don't expire. Not all kinds of points and miles expire, and we can go into that in the future, but some do, and you want to know if they will. This is something that you can do manually with a spreadsheet, but I personally use a tool called Award Wallet. Award Wallet saves your sign in information for most, but not all award programs, and can automatically update your balance with most programs. You can choose to save the sign in information locally on your computer or on a phone so that it isn't saving your logins in the cloud. It's not a perfect tool because some programs like United and Southwest are kind of a pain to set up for tracking, and sometimes it doesn't auto update for me because I forget to log in frequently enough. But overall, I do like it because it saves me from having to manually update a spreadsheet with this information. I also like if I need to look up a account number, I know I can just go there and it has all my account numbers for all my hotel and airline programs. Now, I pay for the plus version because then it also sends me email alerts if I have points or a free night certificate expiring. The more points you earn, the more valuable this feature is. At this point, I believe the plus version is $30 a year, and that's well worth it to me. But there's a free version that you could start using today with no cost. There are some other apps that have been released in recent years that help automate some of these other processes as well, but I really haven't tested them out, and I don't feel like I can give a full review here. If you have another app that you love, feel free to send me an email or a message to let me know. I know some of you might be dreading the action steps today because you have a feeling it might be a little bit of work. I actually think that setting these systems up is one of the most annoying parts of this whole hobby. Unless you love data entry, in which case you'll love it. And the time it takes to do this is going to depend on how many credit cards and points you already have. But I can promise you that taking the time to do this now, this week, will pay off big by saving you time and energy and hassle down the road. It can also save you from missing out on welcome offers or expiring points. And we don't want that. So here it is. Your action steps this week are to set up a system to track your credit cards and your points. It could be a spreadsheet or travel freely or card pointers or a Ward wallet or a note in your phone. It could be something else. But it's going to take some work to set it up. You're going to need to go through your wallet and your credit report and find every card you've opened in the past 24 to 48 months. Now, I recommend going back 48 months due to the number of cards that have eligibility requirements that go back 48 months, but 24 months would be the bare minimum. Enter those cards into your new tracking system with the open date and the close date if applicable. This is the bare minimum. Next, move on to your points. This is a little more fun because it's taking stock of all the points you already have. If you have a spouse or partner, you'll want to do this for both of you. Whether this is with a Word wallet or on a spreadsheet or something else that you discover, start a record of all of your points across hotel, airline, and bank programs. These are your points assets, and you'll want to track them. I have a link to these apps I'm recommending down in the show notes. Like I said, some are affiliate links. I'm so honored and encouraged that so many of you have reviewed the podcast and sent me such nice notes. Thank you. I was a little bit nervous launching the podcast because this is a new medium for me, but I really appreciate all the encouragement that I've gotten. I'll read a quick review here and say thanks to Super Shopper who wrote this. Finally, someone who's giving points hacking advice for everyone else. It's nice to hear how to make smart decisions so your family can fly for almost free, and not just that there's a new aviation product or five-star resort in the far-off regions of the world we need to try. I just want to fly my family for reasonable points and taxes and stay at a nice hotel for free. Katie tells us how to do just that. Give her a listen. If you're enjoying this podcast, I appreciate it so much when you leave a review or share it with a friend. I had someone tell me they already sent the podcast to 4 friends who were new to travel points. This was such a huge compliment to me. I'm aiming for this to be an easy to understand resource for all of us and would love to reach more people with the message that travel points is for them too. That way, more people can remove these financial barriers to taking the trips that they want to take. Thanks so much for spending time with me today. We'll see you next time when we keep unlocking the secrets of travel points together.